And they got the state of Minnesota in 1902 to create the Minnesota Forest Reserve. And that was the first step in it. And after that, they pushed hard with the federal government. And the federal government then in 1908 passed a law calling it the Minnesota National Forest. And then in 1928, they changed the name to the Chippewa National Forest. They said in honor of the natives who were here.
So on a national forest laws allow for multiple uses. So national forest uses that you often see in this part of the world include timber harvest. It includes road construction to get out to different areas of the national forest. It includes creating recreation sites like campgrounds. That's allowed under our laws. There can also be some other things like mining, which happens on national forests in other parts of the country. There aren't any mines on the Chippewa. It can include things like gravel, accessing our gravel pits for getting material for roads. All of those things are allowed under the numerous laws that govern a national forest, which differs from a national park. A national park really has different laws that are primarily geared toward preservation and interpretation. So you'll see big differences between the management of a national forest and management of a national park. And the logging that occurs on the Chippewa National Forest is managed under the different laws, including our forest plan, which is sort of our governing document that allows some vegetation management for different goals. So the part of our goals are to create different diversity out on the forest, and we sometimes do that through logging. We also sometimes do that through other activities such as prescribed burning or different other management actions. We are, as a part of the federal government, we manage the resources here through trust responsibilities for Leech Lake. It's pretty complicated here, of course, because the reservation and the forest overlap, and so we manage the resources out there for sustainable future uses of the tribe. We are required to consult with the tribe when we are proposing management actions, such as a timber sale. If we are proposing a timber sale, we will consult, which is an official word that's actually, I would say it's reserved for that relationship between the federal government and tribal government. With the director of DRM, the director of the Division of Resource Management, has been delegated authority to work directly with the Forest Service, delegated authority by the tribal council. And so we sit down and we talk with the director and the employees at the Division of Resource Management when we're proposing a project. We also go out and meet with the local Indian councils and talk about the proposed management. We gather input there, and we accommodate or adjust our proposed management according to the feedback we hear. That I think is a great partnership is we work closely with what's called the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, and that's Gina Lemon. And every federal agency is required to protect cultural sites or historic sites, and for this national forest, many of those are Leech Lake's important cultural sites, because those are part of Leech Lake's heritage. So we work with DRM to make sure that we're managing those and not disturbing those.
Dawes Act of 1887, an attempt by the federal government to make Indians trustworthy as a smokescreen for grabbing land. They considered Native Americans untrustworthy, they want to make them trustworthy. And you can make them trustworthy only by owning land. So they divided up reservations into plots. 80 acres for a male head of household, 60 acres for a female, 20 acres for children. So imagine a calendar with 1/3 of the calendar blacked out, the squares. All the rest of it is then opened up to settlement. And part of that settlement included timber, cutting the trees down. The Dawes Act led to in Minnesota the Nelson Act. Nelson Act allowed lumber companies to do just about anything they wanted to. An example was you could cut trees if they were scorched 2 feet up by fire. But the lumber companies would do that and go and set fire to a whole section of lumber to make sure that the trees were scorched 2 feet up. And then it was free for taking under the law. And then a group of women, the Minnesota Federation of Women's Clubs, got involved. They were formed in 1885. They did a lot of things about health and youth and preserving bike trails, golf courses, anything that would keep forest, preserved. And they said, you can't cut this area up here. It needs to be preserved forever. If you allow them cut, they will cut down the last stand, the last living stand of white pine in the entire nation. But that Dawes Act, the creation of that Dawes Act, again, it's the heart of everything. Once those allotments were done, then all of the rest of the land was free to take. Then they also placed Native Americans in categories. Categories of competency. Category A was you were totally competent. Examples of that would be Indians who were in the lower echelon of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, minor officials. Category B, you were competent some of the time, you were incompetent the rest of the time. The best example of that is Indian police. They were competent when they had their badges on, incompetent when they had their badges off. The vast majority of Indians, 98%, were placed in category C, totally incompetent. That's where that term wards of the state comes from. The superintendents were actually their fathers, if you will. They were their parents. And they couldn't do anything without the permission of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Lumber companies would come in and look at the allotment sections and say, I would like this allotment to lumber, this to cut. They would bring the owner of that land into the land office and the superintendent's office. On his card was one of the 3 categories, A, B, or C. Normally C, because 98% of them were C. And they would give him whatever, some money, canoe, a gun, jug of whiskey, whatever it took. 2 witnesses would then swear that this individual at this time is in category A and competent to sign his land off. And they did. But as soon as they left, they put him back in category C, which is incompetent, and he had no recourse, no legal recourse. He'd sold his land and that was it. This whole system was discovered actually by some graduate students from the University of Minnesota looking at county governments. And they were in the Cass County headquarters in Walker. And they started looking through these land titles. And every now and then would come up with these cards that had the ABC on them.